Good morning, Tom. Hi, I'm Gerald Hiller. My wife and I have been members of the church since 2003, and I'm currently serving as the treasurer. Today, I'd like to let you know how the church is doing financially. At the end of August, compared to the beginning of 2020, we had essentially the same amount of cash on hand on our assets. We have virtually no liabilities. The building and contents are all paid for. Our pledged giving has remained strong at about 91%, but our overall income is down about 10%, primarily due to the significant reduction we've experienced in the weekly offering. As the building has been closed, there's been virtually no weekly offering since March. On the expense side, we've spent slightly less than we expected to by this time of the year. We're down about 2%. And I'll talk about some of the reasons why we haven't experienced more savings than you might expect with the building being closed. One of the reasons that our finances look as good as they do, based on having the 10% reduction in income, is that we applied for and received a federal Paycheck Protection Program grant in May of this year. We applied for that grant thinking that we wanted to be able to pay our staff just like the building was open during the pandemic. We wanted to continue our mission and outreach to worthy causes through the mission committee, just like the building was open and we were receiving more income, and we've been able to do that. Additionally, we have made some investments in technology to allow us to move towards being a more virtual and versatile congregation during the pandemic, and we believe that these investments will position us well for the future. Tom?
Okay, thank you, Gerald. It's a pleasure being with you this morning. Just as an aside, and I really hadn't planned to say this, but just watching Gerald give his report, just want to say how comfortable it is to work with you and the members of the Finance Committee. I think people of St. Andrew can have confidence that their finances are being handled very well. I'm the Stewardship Chair here at the church this year and next year, I believe, and so I wanted to give you an update on how that's going. First of all, I want to thank you for your continued contributions, which have been significant. And I want to offer maybe two numbers for you to think about. The first is, how many people at St. Andrew actually make a pledge every year? It's about 78% of the congregation. I've been doing stewardship education for a long time, and I can tell you that's a remarkably high number, and I think people can feel good about that. That's especially significant this year at St. Andrew because our unpledged income is down. And so the pledged income is extremely important. The other number that you might be interested in is, okay, people make a pledge, how much of the pledge is actually fulfilled? The last 2 years, between 95 and 99% of pledges have been fulfilled, that is paid off. This year, we're on track for close to 99%. That too is a remarkable achievement and goes to the heart of why St. Andrew seems to be so financially stable at this particular time. A little bit more about pledging, but I'll come back to that in just a moment. Gerald?
Yeah, since we're talking about pledges, Tom, there are multiple ways to make a contribution to St. Andrew if you're able and so inclined to do so. Those of you that are regular givers have already found a way. Those of you that might be contemplating giving can do so via the church website. There's a link on the church website to something called Shelby Next, where you'll have an opportunity to make a donation. There's an app for that on your mobile device. You can download Shelby Next Giving, and then through your mobile device you'll be able to make a contribution. And maybe more recent and maybe most convenient of all is the opportunity to make a donation by sending a text to phone number 913-439-4425. Well, Tom?
Okay, thanks, Gerald. So it's September, and we're coming up to the annual appeal, and I and my committee, Joni Flum and John Seitz, just great to work with, are in the process of developing the narrative budget and the materials that you'll receive in the mail in late October. We're looking for the annual appeal to culminate around the beginning of November. A couple things about that. First of all, it's really, really important that when you receive your pledge material, that you return it. Pretty much every year, we scramble calling people on the phone, et cetera, to get your pledges in. And the reason that's important is that the Finance Committee can't really develop the budget until we have our pledges in. So I'd encourage you to do that. Secondly, and this kind of comes from my own reflections, I've mentioned how generous people are at St. Andrew, how faithful people are to fulfilling their pledges. This year is a unique year. Our unpledged giving, that is giving from people who either members who haven't made a pledge but come to church and do make a contribution then, or from visitors who come and make a contribution, that's down significantly. So we really rely upon pledges. So what I'm doing this year, and it's just for me, I'm kind of starting from scratch in what I think we should, Rebecca and I, should contribute to St. Andrew. I want to take a fresh look and maybe not just add on the 7% or 10% that we might end up recommending to you. Take a fresh look, see what it is. Take a look at how, I'm taking a look, I'll speak to myself, take a look at how we are, how our situation is in life, and what we can do to support this church, which is so strong already and is going to continue to get stronger as the year goes on. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are coming to you from the Hearth Room here at St. Andrew Christian Church, and it is midweek, and so we are talking about our upcoming worship service this coming week. We started a new sermon series based on Luke chapter 4, God's Intentions, Jesus' Footsteps, and talked about anointing last week. And we are moving into the next phase of that, talking about the good news for the poor. But before I get there, I want to talk a little bit about our artwork that is progressively being done throughout the series. Buck Arnhold is our local artisan and is doing artwork, and wanted you to know as we go through the services each week, places you will find some of that artwork. So on Saturday, when you get the email that's promoting the links for the worship service and the Worship and Wonder, that initial image is the sketch work that Buck did for the artwork. And then the artwork itself, you will find details of that art piece in the prelude each week. And then the finished depiction for that particular week you will find in the second hymn that follows the sermon. So I wanted to be a little more clear about where that artwork shows up and where to look for it in the video. So this week we are talking about good news to the poor, and my good friend Mark is here with me. And Mark, from what I understand, that this sermon you've got coming up is going to be really cool this week.
Chris, what do you mean by cool? Are you talking about the relative temperature, or is this about something that's upbeat and popular?
Well, evidently you're not getting what I want, so maybe I would say I hear your sermon's going to be hip this week.
Chris, I'm not sure that really helps. Is that a body part, or are you talking about something that's really a trendy thing, something that's cutting edge?
Okay, Mark's a hard person to figure out here, so I'm going to try it one more time. Okay, I think your sermon's going to be dope this week. Is that getting it?
Oh man, Chris, are you talking about drugs? Or are you talking about, some derogatory term about somebody's relative intelligence? Or are you talking about something that is, really outstanding and interesting and fine?
Well, why don't you just tell me what your sermon's about this week and not let me be the one to introduce it? So.
That might be a good idea. this whole discussion brings to mind something that both my New Testament professor and my Hebrew Bible professor drilled into us class after class. And that was that words take on different meanings in different cultures and different times in history. And so I think it's really important for us as we read the Bible to remember that we're reading something that was written centuries ago, millennia ago, and that the people that wrote and heard or spoke those words might have had a very different understanding of them than what we have today in the 21st century. And so Sunday, what I hope to do is to start to look at that phrase of good news to the poor, to see if Jesus and the people who heard those words might have had a little different understanding of what that meant to them in that day and time. To take off our 21st century lenses and to try to put on some first century lenses so we can dig a little deeper into that meaning and then figure out how it applies to us today as we live our lives in this modern time.
That sounds good, Mark. I hope you join us on Sunday. You're going to hear a sermon that's cool, that's hip, that's dope, all of those things. But more importantly, on a serious note, this text that Jesus reads from the scroll of Isaiah captures the deep heart of what we are called to be as a Christian people. So I hope you join us for worship as we celebrate, as we connect, as we find depth in our life and faith. Join us this week.
See you Sunday.